A billionaire CEO stood before the world and mocked a 9-year-old girl, telling her to fix what his team of experts couldn't. He thought he was making a joke. She thought she was helping. Within 60 seconds, she did the impossible. Within an hour, she exposed crimes worth billions. And by the end of the day, she taught the world a lesson about who we're not listening to. This is a true story of how one invisible child brought an empire to its knees. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with simple honesty that no one saw coming. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about intelligence, expertise, and who really has the answers we need. Welcome to Radiant Story and Tales. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. You know, sometimes the most important moments in our lives start in the most ordinary ways. This is a story about one of those moments, a story that will make you think differently about who deserves to be heard. Let me take you to London, to one of those massive glass buildings in the financial district where important people make important decisions. Inside the headquarters of TechCore Solutions, something terrible was happening. The company's founder and CEO, Dr. Richard Foster, was a man who believed he had all the answers. He had degrees from Oxford and Cambridge. He wore expensive suits and spoke in that confident way that makes people assume you must be right. For 15 years, he'd built TechCore into a giant, worth billions, controlling technology that ran everything from hospital systems to self-driving cars. But on this particular Tuesday morning, Richard's empire was crumbling. For 3 days straight, TechCore's main computer system had been failing. And I don't mean small problems. I mean catastrophic failures. Cars were crashing. Hospital equipment was malfunctioning. The company's stock price was dropping like a stone, losing millions every hour. Richard had called an emergency meeting with his biggest clients, executives from major car companies, hospital networks, even government officials. The boardroom was packed. 200 investors sat in uncomfortable silence, watching Richard's team of expert programmers scramble to fix problems they couldn't even understand. These weren't ordinary programmers either. These were graduates from the best universities in the world, people who'd been studying computers their entire adult lives. And they were failing. Richard stood at the front of the room, his confidence starting to crack. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Behind him, screens flashed with angry red error messages. His lead programmer, Dr. Elizabeth Hart, approached with trembling hands. "Richard," she whispered, "we've tried everything. Nothing's working." But here's where our story really begins. Because in the back corner of that boardroom, almost invisible to everyone focused on the crisis, sat a little girl. Her name was Lily Chen. She was 9 years old, with dark eyes that always seemed to be watching, thinking, processing. Her mother, Wei, worked as a cleaner in the building. Wei had been cleaning these offices for 20 years, arriving before dawn, leaving after everyone else went home. And for the past few years, since Lily was old enough to be left alone, she'd been bringing her daughter along. While her mother emptied trash bins and wiped down desks, Lily would sit quietly in corners, doing her homework, reading books, watching the glowing computer screens that the programmers left running. Nobody paid attention to her. To them, she was just a cleaner's kid, invisible, unimportant, irrelevant. But Lily had been learning. She'd taught herself to read from the programming manuals people threw away. She'd learned basic computer logic from listening to exhausted engineers explain problems to each other. While other kids played video games, Lily studied the patterns she saw in code on abandoned monitors. She understood computers in a way that came naturally to her, like some people understand music or art. And on this morning, sitting in that corner while her mother worked, Lily was watching Richard's disaster unfold with unusual intensity. She could see what was wrong. She'd been seeing it for the past hour, watching the expert programmers chase complicated theories while missing something beautifully simple. But she was just a kid. Who would listen to her? Richard's voice grew more desperate as he tried to reassure the angry investors. "We're experiencing temporary technical difficulties. My team assures me we'll have a solution. Your system killed 3 people yesterday," interrupted one of the automotive executives, his voice cold with fury. "How temporary is temporary?" The room fell silent. Richard's face went pale. 3 people dead because the computers had given the wrong instructions to self-driving cars. The weight of that reality hung in the air like poison. And that's when Richard made the mistake that would change everything. He was looking around the room, desperate, humiliated, angry at his own team's failure. His eyes fell on Lily, sitting quietly in her corner, still watching screens with that intense focus. Something cruel twisted in Richard's chest. If he was going down, he could at least make a joke of it, deflect some of the tension, remind everyone that at least he wasn't as clueless as a child. You know what? Richard's voice dripped with sarcasm as he pointed at Lily. Maybe this kid can solve what my Cambridge graduates can't. Come on up here, sweetheart. Show us how it's done. The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter. People always laugh when powerful men make cruel jokes, even when the jokes aren't funny. Wade grabbed Lily's arm, horrified, trying to pull her toward the exit. But Lily didn't move. She was staring at those screens, at the flashing errors, at the problem that seemed so obvious to her. 2 million people were watching this moment live on the internet. TechCore's disaster was being broadcast worldwide. Cameras captured the exact moment when Richard Foster, billionaire CEO, decided to humiliate a 9-year-old girl for entertainment. Nobody in that room knew they were about to witness something that would change how the world thinks about intelligence, expertise, and who deserves to be heard. Nobody except Lily. She stood up slowly, her small backpack bouncing against her shoulders. And when she spoke, her voice was quiet but absolutely certain. I think I can help. Let me tell you about the worst feeling in the world. It's not being wrong. It's being right when everyone assumes you must be wrong. Lily walked toward the front of that boardroom, and I want you to picture this moment. She's 9 years old, barely 4 feet tall, wearing clothes that have been washed so many times they're starting to fade. Around her, 200 adults in expensive suits are watching with expressions ranging from amusement to annoyance. Richard Foster stood at the front with his arms crossed, a smirk playing at his lips. This was exactly what he wanted, a moment of comic relief to distract from his company's catastrophic failures. This should be entertaining, someone whispered loud enough for others to hear. Lily's mother, Wei, stood frozen near the back exit, her cleaning cart abandoned, her face showing the special kind of fear that only parents understand. The fear of watching your child step into a situation where they might get hurt and being powerless to protect them. But Lily kept walking. She reached the front and looked up at the massive wall of screens showing error messages, system failures, and confused computer code. Dr. Elizabeth Hart, the lead programmer, looked down at her with a mixture of pity and confusion. Sweetheart, Richard said in that condescending tone adults use when they're pretending to be patient, this is incredibly complex technology. Maybe you should let the grown-ups handle. The computer is confused, Lily interrupted, her voice steady. The room went quiet. Richard's smirk widened. Yes, obviously it's malfunctioning. That's why we have 50 experts trying to... No, Lily said again, stronger this time. It's not broken. It just doesn't understand what you're asking it to do. Something shifted in the room. Elizabeth Hart moved closer, curious despite herself. What do you mean? Lily pointed at one of the main screens, at a specific line buried among thousands of others. Right there, you're telling the computer to do something, but you meant to ask a question. It's getting mixed up. Elizabeth squinted at the display, following Lily's finger. Her eyes widened slightly. It's like... Lily searched for words they'd understand. It's like when you say, your name is Elizabeth, instead of asking, is your name Elizabeth? The computer gets confused about whether you're telling it information or asking it to check something. Richard laughed, but it sounded forced now. That's not how programming works, kid. These are sophisticated algorithms, machine learning protocols, neural networks. Can I show you? Lily asked, looking directly at Elizabeth now, ignoring Richard completely. And here's where something beautiful happened. Elizabeth Hart, who'd spent 3 days failing to fix the problem, made a choice. She could protect her ego, or she could be curious. She chose curiosity. Yes, Elizabeth said quietly. Show me. Richard sputtered in disbelief. Elizabeth, you can't seriously be... Let her show us. interrupted one of the automotive executives from front row. The man from Toyota leaned forward with interest. "I'd like to see what the child suggests." Richard felt trapped. Saying no would look petty. Agreeing would legitimize a 9-year-old opinion over his team's expertise. But with cameras broadcasting worldwide and his clients demanding answers, he had no choice. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "When nothing happens, maybe we can return to actual work." Lily walked to Elizabeth's computer and pointed at a specific section of code. "Here, the computer thinks you're changing something instead of checking something. You need to fix how you ask the question." Elizabeth stared at the line Lily indicated. Such a tiny detail, buried in millions of calculations. Her fingers trembled as she made the smallest possible change. One keystroke, one tiny symbol. She pressed enter. For a moment, nothing happened. Richard's smirk returned. Then, one by one, the error messages started disappearing. System status lights shifted from red to yellow to green. Within 60 seconds, every screen showed perfect operation. The room exploded into chaos. Engineers rushed to their stations, confirming what seemed impossible. The system that had been failing for 3 days was suddenly running smoothly. Richard stood frozen, his face cycling through disbelief, embarrassment, and growing anger. That can't be right. But the numbers didn't lie. The diagnostic screen showed a 40% improvement in response time. Error rates had dropped to 0. The system was working better than it ever had. "How did you see that?" Elizabeth asked Lily, her voice filled with wonder. Lily shrugged with the simplicity that only children have. "You were all looking at the hard parts. But the mistake was in an easy part. Nobody checks the easy parts." One of the BMW executives spoke up, his German accent making the question sound even more serious. "Are there more of these easy mistakes we've missed?" Lily studied the screens again, her young mind processing patterns the adults couldn't see. "Lots. They're everywhere once you know what to look for." Richard felt his world tilting. This couldn't be happening. A child couldn't be outsmarting his entire team of experts on live television. But the evidence was right there on the screens for millions of viewers to see. Even if she found one mistake, Richard said desperately, "That doesn't mean—" "Would you like me to find more?" Lily asked, and there was no pride in her voice, no smugness. Just honest curiosity, like she was offering to help find someone's lost keys. The automotive executives exchanged glances. They'd come here expecting to terminate contracts with TechCore. Now they were watching a 9-year-old do what 50 experts couldn't. "Yes," said the Toyota executive firmly. "I think we would all like to see what else young Lily can find." Richard opened his mouth to object, but no words came out. He'd built his entire identity on being the smartest person in every room. And now, in front of the whole world, that identity was crumbling. Lily turned back to the screens, ready to reveal more mistakes. But she had no idea that what she was about to discover would be so much bigger than simple programming errors. Sometimes the truth you find is darker than anyone expected. There's a moment in every story where things stop being simple, where the problem you thought you were solving turns out to be the doorway to something much bigger, much scarier, much more real. For Lily, that moment came about 20 minutes into her demonstration. She'd already found 5 more critical errors in TechCore systems. Each time, she'd point, explain in her simple way, and watch the adults scramble to confirm what their eyes couldn't believe. The room had gone from mocking her to watching in stunned silence. But Richard Foster wasn't ready to surrender. He stood there, his expensive suit rumpled from stress, watching his life's work being dissected by a child. And desperate people do desperate things. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard announced suddenly, his voice trying to reclaim authority, "I think we need to step back and consider the bigger picture here." The room turned to him. He straightened his tie and forced confidence into his voice. "Yes, Lily has found some interesting observations, but we're talking about life-and-death technology here. Autonomous vehicles that carry families, hospital systems that control medical equipment, military-grade security protocols." He looked directly at the camera, speaking to the millions watching. You can't just let an untrained child make changes to systems this critical. The legal liability alone. The systems are already failing, interrupted the Toyota executive coldly. Your liability couldn't get much worse. But that's exactly my point. Richard's voice rose with desperation. We don't know what caused these failures. For all we know, they could be the result of sophisticated cyber attacks. External hackers trying to sabotage our company. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The idea of hackers sounded plausible, professional, adult. Much more comfortable than admitting a child had found problems they'd missed. Lily looked up at Richard with her head tilted. The way children do when adults say something that doesn't make sense. Mr. Foster, why would hackers make the same mistakes your programmers always make? The room went quiet. Richard felt ice in his stomach. What do you mean? The bad code uses your company's style, Lily explained with devastating simplicity. Same spacing, same words for variables, same format for the comments, even the same spelling mistakes. Elizabeth Hart rushed to check what Lily was suggesting. Her face went pale as she compared the problematic code to TechCore's internal documentation. Richard. Elizabeth's voice shook. Lily's right. This matches our internal programming standards perfectly. This isn't external sabotage. These are training issues from inside our company. The implications hit everyone at once. This wasn't about hackers or bad luck. This was about systematic failures in how TechCore taught its people to write code. Years of wrong methods, spreading through the company like a disease. That's impossible, Richard said, but his voice had lost its power. Our training program is world-class. I designed it myself. Lily studied the screens more carefully, her young face serious. Mr. Foster, can I show you something else? No, Richard said quickly. Too quickly. I think we've seen enough for today. Richard, the BMW executive said quietly, let the child speak. Lily pointed to a different section of the display. There are patterns here. The same mistakes happen over and over in all your systems. It's like everyone learned the same wrong way to do things. Elizabeth Hart began tracing through the code, following Lily's observations across multiple systems. Hospital management, traffic control, financial transactions. The same flawed patterns appeared everywhere. How long? Elizabeth asked quietly, already knowing the answer would be terrible. Years, Lily said simply. These mistakes are in old code and new code. They've been there since the beginning. The weight of that reality settled on the room like snow. Not just 3 days of failures. Years of dangerous, flawed systems running hospitals, controlling traffic, managing money. The scope of the disaster was beyond anything they'd imagined. Richard felt his authority dissolving like sugar in rain. His training program, his methodology, his entire approach, all fundamentally broken from the start. But there's something else, Lily said, her voice smaller now, like she was afraid to say what she'd found. Something worse. Elizabeth knelt down to Lily's level. What is it, honey? The mistakes aren't just mistakes, Lily whispered. Some of them are different, like someone made them on purpose. The room erupted in urgent whispers. Richard's face went white. What do you mean on purpose? Elizabeth asked gently. Lily pointed to specific sections of code. These parts here, they're hidden. They look like mistakes. But they're actually doing secret things, like little doors that someone can use to sneak into computer. Elizabeth checked the code Lily identified. Her gasp echoed through the silent room. These are backdoors, security vulnerabilities that allow unauthorized access. How many? Richard asked, his voice barely audible. Lily studied the screens. Lots, maybe hundreds, in all the systems. The automotive executives stood up, faces dark with fury. If TechCore systems had backdoors, it meant customer data, trade secrets, vehicle designs. Everything could have been stolen. This is criminal, someone said. Richard's assistant rushed over. Phone pressed his ear. Sir, the FBI Cybercrime Division is calling. They've been monitoring unusual data activity from our servers for months. The room transformed from a business meeting into a crime scene. Everything Lily had done fixing the errors, exposing the training failures, had accidentally revealed something much darker. Richard stood there, watching his empire collapse in slow motion. He'd tried to humiliate a 9-year-old girl for a laugh. Instead, she'd uncovered the biggest security breach in tech history. "Mr. Foster," Lily said, looking up at him with those thoughtful dark eyes, "why did you try to blame the hackers for mistakes your company made?" It was the question everyone was thinking. The question that would define Richard Foster's legacy. How do you explain lying when a child has already caught you in a lie? But Lily wasn't done. The final revelation was still coming, and it would change everything about how this story ended. You know what's interesting about truth? Once you start pulling on one thread, the whole tapestry begins to unravel. And sometimes what you find underneath isn't what anyone expected. The FBI agents arrived within an hour. Serious people in dark suits, carrying equipment, transforming TechCore's gleaming boardroom into an investigation site. News helicopters circled the building. The world's media had descended on what started as a product demonstration and became the story of the year. Richard Foster stood off to the side now, no longer the center of attention. His lawyers had arrived and were whispering urgently in his ear about liability, criminal charges, and corporate responsibility. The man who'd started this day as a billionaire CEO was ending it as a potential defendant. But here's where the story takes a turn that surprised everyone, including me when I first heard it. Lily sat quietly with her mother, Wei, overwhelmed by everything happening around her. Investigators were examining the code she'd found. Journalists were trying to get interviews. The automotive executives were on phones with their legal teams, calculating damages and lost revenue. Elizabeth Hart approached them carefully, kneeling down to Lily's eye level. "Lily, I need to ask you something important." The little girl looked up, tired but alert. "These back doors you found, they're evidence of serious crimes. The FBI is going to need to understand exactly what you discovered and how you found it. Are you okay with helping them?" Lily nodded slowly. "I just wanted to fix the confused computers." "I know, sweetheart, but you did something much bigger than that. You probably saved a lot of people from getting hurt." Wei pulled her daughter closer protectively. "Will Lily be in trouble?" She was just trying to help. No, Elizabeth assured her quickly. "Lily's a hero, but—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "There's going to be a lot of attention. Media, lawyers, investigators. It could be overwhelming." One of the FBI agents joined their conversation. He was older, with kind eyes that had seen a lot, but still managed to look gentle. "Mrs. Chun, Lily, my name is Agent Morrison. I want to make sure you understand what's happening here." He pulled up a chair and sat down so he wasn't looming over them. "The evidence Lily found shows that someone has been stealing information from TechCore systems for at least 18 months. Customer data, trade secrets, possibly classified information. It's one of the largest security breaches we've ever investigated." "But Lily didn't do anything wrong," Wei said firmly. "No, ma'am. She's helped us tremendously. But I need to ask her some questions about how she found these problems." For the next hour, Lily explained her thinking to Agent Morrison, how she'd been watching programmers work for years, how she'd taught herself to recognize patterns, how the mistakes seemed obvious once you knew what to look for. Agent Morrison listened with genuine respect, never once treating her like a child who couldn't understand important things. When she finished, he sat back with a thoughtful expression. "Lily, you have a genuine gift for this work. In my 20 years with the FBI, I've never seen someone identify system vulnerabilities as quickly or accurately. Does that mean the bad people can be stopped?" Lily asked. "Yes. Thanks to you, we can trace where the stolen data went and potentially recover it. You've helped us solve a case we've been working on for months." Meanwhile, across the room, Richard Foster faced his own reckoning. The Toyota executive approached him with cold formality. "Dr. Foster, on behalf of our company and the other automotive partners here, I want to inform you that we're suspending all contracts with TechCore pending a full security audit." Richard nodded numbly. "I understand. I also want to say something else." The executive's voice softened slightly. "You made a mistake today that goes beyond business. You tried to humiliate a child for entertainment. You use your power to punch down instead of lifting others up. That tells us more about your character than any of these technical failures. Richard looked at Lily, sitting with her mother, patiently answering the FBI agent's questions. The child he'd mocked had saved his company from total destruction, exposed crimes his experts couldn't detect, and done it all with simple honesty and clear thinking. "You're right," Richard said quietly. "I was cruel, arrogant, blind to my own failures." "The question," said the BMW technical director, joining the conversation, "is what you do about it." Richard walked slowly across the room. Cameras tracked his movement. 7 million people were watching the live stream now, waiting to see what would happen next. He stopped in front of Lily and Wei. For a long moment, he just stood there, a powerful man trying to find words adequate to the situation. "Lily," Richard finally said, his voice breaking, "I owe you the biggest apology of my life." Lily looked up at him with those thoughtful eyes. "I was cruel to you today. I tried to make you small so I could feel big. I dismissed your abilities because they threatened my ego, and you responded with courage, intelligence, and honesty that I don't deserve." Wei started to speak, but Richard held up his hand gently. "Please, let me finish. Lily, you didn't just fix our systems. You exposed my failures as a leader, as a teacher, as a human being. You've taught me that wisdom doesn't require credentials. It requires the courage to see clearly and speak truthfully." He pulled out his phone and made a transfer right there, in front of everyone. "I promise you 100 million pounds if you solved our problem. You've earned far more than that, but I'm a man of my word." Wei gasped as her phone pinged with notification. Richard had transferred the full amount. "I don't want your money to come with strings or expectations," Richard continued. "Use it however you think best. Education, charity, whatever brings you joy. You've earned it by being brilliant when I was blind, brave when I was cruel, and honest when I was deceitful." Lily looked at her mother, then back at Richard. "Mr. Foster, do you understand now why the computers were confused?" Richard smiled sadly. "Yes, Lily, I understand that I was confused too, about what matters, about what intelligence really means, about who deserves to be heard." "Good," Lily said simply. "Because the computers still need help. There are more problems to fix." And that's when Richard Foster made a decision that would define the rest of his life. Let me tell you about transformation, not the Hollywood kind where music swells and everything becomes perfect instantly. The real kind, where change is hard and uncomfortable and requires you to become someone you're not sure you know how to be. Richard Foster stood in that boardroom, surrounded by FBI agents, angry clients, and journalists documenting his downfall. He had a choice. He could retreat, protect what remained of his ego, blame others for his failures. Or he could do something that powerful people rarely do, admit he was completely wrong and genuinely change. "Elizabeth," Richard said, turning to his lead programmer, "I'm stepping down as CEO of TechCore, effective immediately." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Even Elizabeth looked stunned. "But, Richard," she began, "you built this company from broken foundations," Richard interrupted gently. "My training methods were flawed. My hiring practices prioritized credentials over capability. My leadership style valued confidence over competence. I need to fix myself before I can help fix this company." He turned back to Lily and Wei. "But before I do anything else, I want to make something right." Richard gestured to the wall of screens still showing TechCore systems. "Lily, you found problems we missed for years. You exposed security breaches that could have destroyed countless lives. But there are more systems that need reviewing: hospital networks, traffic control, emergency services. Would you be willing to help us make them safer?" "Richard," one of his lawyers hissed urgently, "you can't formally employ a 9-year-old child. There are laws." "Then we'll work within the laws," Richard said firmly. "We'll create an advisory program, fair compensation, proper education support, age-appropriate hours. And we'll find other young people like Lily who see the world differently." He addressed the room now, speaking to the automotive executives, the investors, the millions watching online. "How many brilliant minds have we overlooked because they didn't fit our narrow definition of expertise. How many Lilies are sitting in corners right now, invisible to us, holding answers we desperately need? The Toyota executive stood up slowly. Dr. Foster, you're proposing to rebuild your entire company structure around advice from children? No, Richard said. I'm proposing we rebuild our company around truth, regardless of where it comes from. Lily proved that wisdom doesn't require age or credentials. It requires clarity and courage. He looked directly at the camera. To everyone watching in boardrooms, universities, companies around the world, I want to ask you a question. Who are you not listening to? What voices have you dismissed because they didn't match your expectations? Wei spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but strong. Mr. Foster, I appreciate what you're saying, but my daughter is 9 years old. She needs childhood, not corporate responsibility. You're absolutely right, Richard agreed. That's why I'm not asking Lily to be an employee. I'm asking permission to learn from her, on her terms, in ways that protect her childhood while respecting her gifts. He knelt down to Lily's level. Lily, what do you want? Not what I want. Not what makes good television. What would make you happy? Lily thought for a moment, her face serious. I want to keep learning about computers, but I also want to play with my friends and read books and do normal kid stuff. Then that's exactly what will happen, Richard promised. A few hours a week. If you want, you can help review systems. The rest of the time, you get to be 9 years old. And my mom won't have to clean buildings anymore. Lily asked. Richard looked at Wei. Mrs. Chen, with your daughter's earnings and my commitment to making this right, you'll never have to clean another office unless you choose to. Wei's eyes filled with tears. 20 years of scrubbing floors, emptying trash, being invisible. And now, because her daughter had the courage to speak up, everything was changing. Over the next weeks, the transformation began in earnest. Richard established the Clear Eyes program, recruiting young people from all backgrounds to review technology systems, not as employees, but as advisors whose fresh perspectives could catch problems experts missed. The story exploded globally. Schools started teaching about Lily's discovery. Companies began reevaluating their hiring practices. Parents started truly listening when their children pointed out things that didn't make sense. Tech core systems, reviewed by Lily and her growing team of young advisors, became the safest in the industry. The automotive companies returned, impressed by the genuine commitment to improvement. The FBI successfully prosecuted the data thieves, recovering millions in stolen information. But the real change happened in millions of individual hearts. A 12-year-old girl in Mumbai who'd been told to stop asking annoying questions found the courage to speak up about a flaw in her school security system. A 7-year-old boy in Sao Paulo who'd been dismissed as too young to understand showed his father how to fix a problem with their neighborhood's traffic lights. A 14-year-old in Chicago who'd been labeled a troublemaker exposed corruption in a local government system because adults finally listened when she raised concerns. Lily's story gave voice to everyone who'd ever been told they were too young, too inexperienced, too different to have valuable insights. 6 months after that infamous boardroom meeting, Lily sat in a much smaller room with Richard, Elizabeth, and Wei. No cameras, no audience. Just 4 people who've been changed by each other. How are you doing with everything? Elizabeth asked gently. Good, Lily said, swinging her legs under her chair. I helped review the hospital system in Manchester last week. Found 3 problems that could have been really bad. She also got an A on her math test and joined the football team, Wei added proudly. Richard smiled, a genuine smile, not the corporate mask he'd worn before. That's what success really looks like. Balance. Using your gifts without losing yourself. Mr. Foster, Lily asked, have you been learning too? Every day, Richard admitted. Learning to listen instead of assuming. Learning to value clarity over complexity. Learning that sometimes the wisest people are the ones we least expect. He pulled out a small notebook, well-worn from constant use. You taught me something important, Lily. You taught me to look at the easy parts everyone else ignores. I'm trying to apply that to everything now, not just programming, but leadership, relationships, life. That's good. Lily said with the simple approval children give when adults finally understand something obvious. As they left that meeting, Wei took her daughter's hand. "Are you happy, Lily?" "Yeah," Lily said. "But Mommy—" "Yes, sweetheart. I kind of miss sitting in the corner sometimes." It was quiet there. Wei laughed, understanding perfectly. Her brilliant, extraordinary daughter just wanted to be ordinary sometimes too. And maybe that's the real lesson of this story. Extraordinary things can come from ordinary people when someone finally gives them the chance to be heard. Somewhere right now, there's a Lily sitting quietly in a corner. Maybe it's your daughter, your son, your student, your employee. Maybe it's you. Someone who sees clearly but hasn't found the courage to speak up. Someone who has answers but hasn't been asked the questions. Don't wait for a crisis to listen. Don't wait for disaster to value unconventional wisdom. The next person who could change your world might be someone you've been overlooking every single day. Richard Foster learned this lesson the hard way, humiliated on global television before he found the humility to change. You don't have to wait that long. Ask yourself tonight, who am I not listening to? What voices have I dismissed? What wisdom am I missing because I'm looking in all the wrong places? The answers might surprise you. They might challenge you. They might come from someone unexpected, someone young, someone different, someone you'd never have thought to ask. But if you listen, really listen, those answers might just change everything. That's Lily's gift to all of us, not just fixing confused computers, but reminding us that wisdom speaks in many voices. And the bravest thing we can do is hear them all. Thank you for listening to this story. And remember, the next time someone unexpected offers to help, especially someone you'd normally dismiss, maybe give them a chance. You never know. They might just be the person who saves everything.